Hey dreamers, if you've had a paranormal encounter that you'd like to share with the show, you can write in or record a message using your phone and send it to somedreamland@gmail.com. Or you can follow the link in the show notes to use our voice message system. If you're enjoying the show, please don't forget to follow, subscribe, rate, and leave a review with your favorite podcatcher. Also, find and follow us on Facebook and Twitter using @somedreamland. And while you're at it, please let your friends and family know about the show, as this will only help to grow our audience and enable us to bring you more quality content in the future. As always, thank you for listening. It is much appreciated.
You're about to enter a podcast filled with high strangeness, conspiracies, the paranormal, and legends from around the world, with your host, Ken Mark, and brought to you by WNIP Productions. This is Somewhere in Dreamland.
Welcome back, dreamers. Tonight, my guest is Joedy Cook. Joedy is a retired U.S. Army vet, an Iraq war vet, a former police officer, the author of over 13 books, and he sits at the head of the North American Dogman Project as the world's foremost dogman researcher. So without further ado, grab your blanket, turn down the lights, get comfy, and let's fade away into
Dreamland.
Well, Joedy, let's get started here. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and where you're coming from with it?
I've kind of been into it for around 30 years. I did a lot of UFO research prior to doing cryptozoology. And I kind of fell into the cryptozoology as I was doing UFO research. And I love the UFO field. I love the crypto field. I love the paranormal because I've done it all, and the cryptids field is just so exciting because there's just so many different cryptids out there. The UFO field basically stays the same. Paranormal field is almost like the same, but in cryptozoology, there's always something happening. You have so many different cryptids. So I've been doing that, like I said, for 30 years. And I just love it. And then 2006, I started to stay with one particular cryptid, and that's Dogman. And from there on, it just, it kind of boomed.
Was there an experience or an incident that got you involved or excited about UFOs or cryptids or anything like that got you started? Or did you just have an interest to begin with? I
have always had an interest. Back as a kid in the 70s, around 74, there was a real big UFO flap that was going across the country. And I remember in art class, the art teacher was like, draw a picture of what you think an alien is, or what do you think a UFO is? Because like I said, it was something that was happening like every day all over the country. And it was like, man, that was so cool. And I was always into monsters. When I was a kid, I saw The Legend of Boggy Creek. I just loved it. Anything that deal with it, I just loved it. And then, because you never think about as a child, that you can actually go looking for these things and people actually look for them. It was like one of these things, well, you found it if you went out to the dark, at night or something. And I've always read up on the subjects, found people who were interested in it. You get into groups, and it just, it was a passion. And it was, I think it kept me out of trouble, honestly.
Yeah. So how did you transition or why did you transition from Bigfoot and UFOs to Dogman? Is it because you felt like Bigfoot and all that kind of all stay the same, or?
No, I mean, the UFO stuff, I still dabble in some of the UFO stuff. Like I said, I did it pretty hard, back in the 1980s. And, like I said, we were getting some cryptid stuff, a lot of Bigfoot stuff. And I was like, this sounds interesting. Let me do this. And I kind of fell into the Bigfoot stuff for years. And the field just really got very political. It ended up being a clique, is the best way to describe it. If you didn't have the right last name, you weren't speaking at the conferences. It came to the point where in the Bigfoot community is they had a set group of people that they wanted everybody to listen to. You don't listen to anybody else except these group of people. And when you go to a conference and you see these group of people talking, and then you go to another conference and it's the same people, and then you go to another conference, it's the same people, it gets old. It was cutting the opportunity out for a whole lot of people that had information to share, and they wouldn't be able to share it because they didn't have the right last name or they didn't belong to the right organization. And I said, I don't need any of this. I'm gonna do my thing on my own. And the Dogman was a new cryptid. The sightings weren't coming out as much as they were, now. And I decided, this might be something interesting to look into, and I just jumped into it and stayed with it.
Well, you're doing a good job at it, I'll tell you that.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So can you tell my audience what the biggest difference between, I know there's a lot of similarities, but the biggest difference between maybe a werewolf and Dogman, what would that be?
Well, here's the thing about werewolf. When people think of werewolf, they think of like the Lon Chaney 1941 movie.
Yep.
And the thing about werewolves is that they're something that changes from one organism to another organism. Okay. And it's physically impossible to do for, a human to turn into a werewolf. That's Hollywood. Okay. But when people say Dogman, they refer to as a werewolf because you have like the movie The Howling, Dog Soldiers, things like that, Van Helsing, and it has that particular style werewolf.
Yeah.
Which is more like a wolf on two legs. And so people, when they see this, they refer to it as werewolf. Now, here in the United States, we call it Dogman. If you, if you go to Canada, they always refer it as a werewolf. Okay. They do refer it as Dogman also, but not so much. But if you go to Europe, it's a werewolf. United Kingdom, it's a werewolf. They don't use the word Dogman because it's a werewolf because it's been so embedded in their history. That's what they refer it to. And the Europeans have a lot of history, even physical evidence that these things actually exist, which is kind of unique. But here in the States, like you said, we call it Dogman, but that's the difference between a werewolf and Dogman. But you can refer Dogman as a werewolf, but not as a classic werewolf, which would be Lon Chaney.
It transforms
that transforms.
Got it.
Because transformation, you have to understand, it would destroy your organs. Your bones basically would have to be cartilage. So your body just could not, and it would probably be very, very painful, and you probably would not want to do it if you didn't have to.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it would be very fun.
No.
Well, you're an Ohio native then, right?
Yes, born and raised.
So, same here. So both of us know that Ohio is just a weird ass place, right?
Oh, it's it's probably the I'm trying to think the right word for that. It's probably the target place for. We have more cryptids, UFOs, paranormal activity than any other state in the country.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was highly disappointed. Like I said, we moved down to South Carolina about a year and a half ago, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait. I can go explore. There's going to be some new stuff. Yeah, there's literally like the Boo Hag, the Lizard Man, and one werewolf sighting in 1945. And that's it. The rest of it's ghosts. Like nobody really cares about anything but ghosts down here.
Yeah, because it has a long history of paranormal, and that's why, a lot of it has to go back to the Civil War and the American Revolution and the War of 1812. So that's why you deal with a lot of that stuff down there. But there is stuff going on between Bigfoot and UFOs and Dogmen, in your state. It's not talked about as much as the paranormal stuff is.
Do you think that Bigfoot and Dogman sightings get mixed up sometimes?
Oh, they do. And it has even happened to me. I was going back when I started getting into the Dogman stuff. I was going back looking at my reports going back in the 70s and the 80s. And some of these reports that people gave to me, either, the Bigfoot had high pointed ears, or it had a snout, or the legs were backwards like a dog. Because you have to understand, in Ohio and really basically across the United States, they weren't a whole lot of Dogman sightings. In the 1970s, the biggest case in the country was the Defiance, Ohio case in 1972, where a werewolf harassed the town of Defiance for about a week. And it got to the point where the police were basically giving reports, well, it's not a werewolf, this thing is wearing clothes, which it wasn't. But they were saying that to make people not get so scared, thinking it was somebody in a costume, when the police actually knew that this thing was real. I mean, it is actually attacked people, and it made worldwide news in the 70s. So you didn't have a whole lot of that stuff going on. So no one really knew about Dogman. So when you get reports, of a Bigfoot, that was different characteristics, like a snout. When you think of snout, you think maybe a protrude mouth, like a gorilla or something like that. But actually, it was more like a dog is what these people were seeing. So they were seeing these sightings in the 70s and the 80s, but you never looked at it as a dogman because you've never heard of a dogman sighting.
Well, I bet you that got you excited when you went back and looked at all that, didn't it?
Oh, it did, because I had a lot, and I'm like, man, this is exciting. And then you go back to the area, and you find out they're having Dogman sightings in that area. And it just, well, that makes sense now, what these people are seeing.
Yeah, for sure. So it seems like the last 4 or 5 years, Dogman sightings have really taken off in like that whole northeastern area, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. It seems like is that pretty fair to say?
Definitely. It is. That is like the biggest hotspot in the country, other than when you go further south and when you look at Texas, Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, South Carolina, then you start seeing heavy pockets of activity there. Then you look at the Four Corners, where there's a lot of activity that's taking place there. And then California area. Okay. Not so much in the Pacific Northwest itself, but in California. But, we're getting reports from Border Patrol agents that are seeing these things frequently on the border. And they're actually finding bodies that have been completely ripped apart.
Oh, wow.
On the border of immigrants. So it's very well known fact along the Texas border that these things exist out there because it's a feeding ground for them. And I mean, I got a really good friend who I worked with here in Ohio at another job before he took a job at the Border Patrol. And he's like, man, these things are real. I mean, they exist. They see them. They're giving briefings on them. They're not supposed to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
But he goes, I know you're into it. And I'm telling you, man, we see these things. We see them along the border.
So what do you think the uptick of sightings are, just because they're out there now and people know what they're seeing?
Well, I think the upkick is, there's a lot of neighborhoods being built, a lot of, homes being built, in certain states, more and more people are wanting to get out of the city and get more into a rural or country environment, or have a house somewhere where the neighbors may be a half mile away or something to that effect. So you're in their environment and you're building in their environment. So you're starting to see more and more of them. And I think within, 100 years or 200 years, their population has grown. And here's kind of a neat thing too. You take like the lost colony of Roanoke, which is a very famous case.
Yep.
Well, that particular island, they're seeing Dogman sightings there.
Really?
Yeah. And it's kind of unique. And it's like, well, maybe they had something to do with the colony being missing.
Yeah.
I find that interesting.
Very.
So you find, when you get sightings and you get information, you try to coincide with any type of history that took place there. So you're seeing if there's any type of information as far as, like, give you an example, Roanoke Island. Well, we know, what, 300 years ago that happened?
Mm-hmm.
Were these things there at the time? Now that we have sightings, different places across the country, and you coincide with it. And one thing that we're doing now is, we're getting under the Freedom of Information Act through the U.S. Forestry Service on a map of where bear attacks have taken place across the country. And we're trying to coincide them with Dogman sightings and Dogman attacks to see if the possibility is that the U.S. Forestry Service and, local law enforcement are covering Dogman attacks up with bear attacks, because you probably couldn't tell the difference between the two. So we're working on that right now.
Let's talk about that for a minute. So if there is a Dogman and there is a Bigfoot, and we know there are bears, do you think they ever run into each other out there?
Well, I'm sure they do. The thing of it is, both animals are territorial. So I'm sure they respect their boundaries. Land between the lakes is one particular area where they kind of respect their areas. North of, I think the road is 68. I might be wrong, but north of 68 is where all the Dogman sightings are, and that's going into the Kentucky side. And the southern part are where all the Bigfoot sightings are, and that's going into the Tennessee part. So they have been reports of sightings on both sides. You might have a rogue one that decides he's just going to go and wander in, or he doesn't realize they're wandering into other territory. But I think they do at a point respect each other's territories. But, when you got two tough guys, eventually they're going to fight.
Right.
So that's part of the problem. When you think about this is, if they do fight, who would come the victor? of the fight. Bigfoot obviously has the strength. Dogman has weapons, his claws and his teeth. And most of the time, he probably wouldn't be alone.
Right. Yeah. Because they would fight in packs, right?
Right. They would probably fight in packs. And, just thinking about that is, it's nerve wracking because you have to look at the pros and cons of that. And I'm sure it comes out even. You have so many Bigfoot wins a fight, so many Dogman wins a fight. We have one particular case we've been working on in Utah, where this little community there of farmers, they knew there was a Bigfoot in the area, because there's wood line, and woods there, and they knew there were Bigfoot there because they've seen it, but it never bothered like their livestock, never bothered their homes or their pets or anything. They would see it, across the field or, within a tree line and things. They would hear it at night, but it never bothered the people, so they were never scared of it. And then livestock start coming up missing, pets coming up missing. Larger livestock like cows and horses were being attacked, very nasty wounds on these animals. And they were getting dumbfounded, trying to figure out what's doing this, because they knew it couldn't have been the Bigfoot, because the Bigfoot never done it before. And this Bigfoot's been in this community, for years. So everybody knew about it. And they start seeing what they describe as a werewolf. A large canine walking on two legs. One particular incident, the woman who had her horses attacked and very nasty wounds. And these things about with these attacks on the horse was interesting. The claw marks were on the chest, meaning that this thing came at the horse from front. The horse was fighting back. Normal animals and people do not get in front of a horse. They will kill you.
Right.
Okay. And these marks were on this chest, and they're five finger marks. I mean, that's what's interesting about them. So the daughter was in the bedroom, and right at her back window there's a security light that pops on if motion happens. So it popped on, so she looked out and she heard the horses, and she sees what she described as a large dog about 8 to 10 feet long, doing like a combat crawl. It's the way she described it. Wow. On the ground by the corral.
Wow.
Yeah. And so they said one night, it was just about dusk. It was still light out a little bit. It was just getting dark. Then they start hearing this god-awful screaming, of two animals fighting. One they believe was the Bigfoot. The other one they believe was this Dogman. And after that fight happened, they said they've never seen the Bigfoot again. And they're still having activity today with this Dogman. And these people are like, we're going to kill it. We'll kill it, And I try to explain to them, if these things, they might be retaliatory. If you kill them, they might come after you, and so forth. So you got to be careful with this.
Have you ever heard any stories of anybody actually killing one?
Killing a Dogman?
Yeah.
Well, you hear stories about people killing them. We get a lot of information about people who, discharged their weapon on one, and it has done nothing. I mean, one of our members actually shot one at point blank range in the chest. And actually, he was on the show Terror in the Woods about his sighting. They talked to him, and he's going down a dark road with his camper. Something hit the camper, so he stopped. He gets out, and he sees the back tail light is busted, but he has his weapon with him. And he said he heard a popping sound, and he said this Dogman came out into the road. And at that time, he heard something off to his right, and there was another one getting ready to flank him. and he shot it point blank range in the chest with a .357 Magnum.
Whoa.
Yeah, he said, yeah, it didn't do anything.
It's time to leave then.
Yeah.
It's time to get out of there. I'd have been.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even have shot. I'd have just been gone. It would have scared me. I'd have been done.
Yeah, he left. So
I'll bet, man.
yeah.
So why do you think Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, why do you think they have such a high number of sightings in those three states?
Well, you have to understand, Ohio and Pennsylvania and even, Kentucky and Indiana, these are farmland. Okay. You have a lot of cattle, you have a lot of deer. I mean, the food source in the Northeast is much higher than any other part of the country. I mean, like you said, Ohio, we're a dairy and pork, state. Beef and pork and dairy comes out of Ohio. Same thing with Indiana. You look at Kentucky, same thing. Yeah, they have a lot of horses, but they still deal with a lot of cattle, a lot of bison, dairy products, and same thing with Pennsylvania. So the food source is there, and I think this is why that we have so much in the Northeast. I mean, same thing if you look at Wisconsin and Illinois, Michigan, a lot of woods.
Yeah.
A lot of cover in all these states. I mean, even over, the Allegheny Mountains, a lot of forest up in that area. So there's a lot of places for these things to hide. And the food source, with the deer, smaller game and things like that, it's the place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Deer up north are different than deer down here for sure. I know, so we had a deer in the neighborhood one day, and someone said, "There's a deer in the neighborhood," and they took a picture of it. And I said, "That's a dog. You haven't seen a deer until you've seen a deer up north."
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I live in a residential area. Okay. And it's not uncommon to see deers in our walking our neighborhood. I was just walking my dog about 2 weeks ago. We ran across a buck that was, at the, where my street is, there was another street, and the street kind of goes into like a half circle where you can get to the other end of our street. He was coming up this back way, and my dog, I have a German Shepherd, and he looked at him, and it's like, he scared my dog, I think, because the size of him, and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, a lot of deer in Ohio, especially a lot of roadkill. And, especially like in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and things like that. So, these animals do have a food source, and, predators, they don't leave an area if the food source and a water source is good. If it's plungeable, they'll have no reason, to run into another area or migrate anywhere because of the food source. And the thing about predators and even animals itself, animals don't migrate unless the environment changes. Okay, or the food source is gone, the water source. You look at Africa. Well, animals migrate. Why do they migrate? Because when the rainy season comes, they're going to die. They're going to drown. They're going to get stuck in mud. And they're going to be, punishable for, the predators. So that's why in Africa you have that large migration because of, the environment changing. Here in, the United States, the only time, like I said, if something happens to the environment, they have no choice, like a fire or, something that's going to be harmful to them, or the food source is gone. Then they'll move on. If the food source is good, they're going to stay. Same thing with humans. Majority of all humans stay within 10 miles of where they were born.
Yeah.
So they know migrate out unless the environment changed, finance, national disaster, marriage, going into the military or something to that effect. But eventually you come back, so, and it stays the same with, animals and predators.
Makes sense to me. Have you noticed an uptick in sightings since the pandemic happened?
No, not really. Actually, last summer, it kind of went down because, people were basically forced to stay home. A lot of parks, a lot of areas were closed down because of COVID-19. So the sightings, like I said, just basically went down, basically cut in half. I think that we probably had last year, from when the pandemic started going up to December, probably 15 sightings.
Wow,
and this is just, and I mean, we normally get 30 to 40 a month, sometimes more, coming into our site. And that doesn't even count what's coming into our Facebook pages. So now that everything's open, people are going back. Now we're getting a lot more sightings. They're being taking place. Yeah,
that makes sense. I know down here since the pandemic, we've had more Bigfoot sightings, but I think that's just because it's so open here, and people are home, and they're literally pine forest on top of pine forest here, So
the South has always been well known for big, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, some parts of Alabama. You've had a lot of sightings of Bigfoot. That's probably what I would probably say that particular those regions are probably the best Bigfoot areas that's out there right now.
Okay. So let's talk about Akron. I know there's a metro park up there that's going crazy. I've actually been there trying to explore a little bit myself, but tell me about that.
Well, it's not just one metro park. I mean, it's quite a few metro parks in Akron that is having sightings, Dogman sightings. I've got drawings from park rangers who have seen them. I've got drawings from people who almost ran them over crossing a road in Akron.
Wow.
It's a very hot spot. There's one particular area in Akron that's that's east of Akron, heading towards the Pennsylvania border area, where a guy was older gentleman. He was 68 years old, a good old boy type guy, loves turkey hunting. He was hunting turkey, was sitting, in the woods out there, heard the turkeys. He was moving through the woods. He had a single shot, 12 gauge shotgun, and the turkey stopped. So he stopped. He figured, well, crap, he heard me. And he was on the tree line, and there was like a opening that was almost like a circle in this area that you had to cross to get into the other part of the field. I mean, he could have went around it because it wasn't that big, but he decided to cross that field, that little area, to get to the other side of the woods, because that's where the turkeys were. And as he was in the middle of that opening, he said 5 dogs came out at him, running on 2 legs. 5 of them. They circled him. Okay. They all looked at him, except for one that was showing some type of aggression. He would raise his weapon up and they would kind of move back. So obviously they knew what a gun was. Okay. But he said 4 of them were male. He was able to see that. He said, I can see the genitalia. They were more like human than they were a dog. And he said the smaller one had to have been a female because he didn't see any type of genital on her. Okay, and she was the one that was the aggressive one. And they kind of like moved him out of the woods. So basically what he was saying, he thinks that, they did that because they were hunting turkeys and they weren't going to let him go near them, the turkey. So he was able to get out. He goes, I'll never go hunting again. But he never called them werewolf. He never called them dogman. He never called them anything except dogs. He goes, I couldn't understand how these dogs were able to run on two legs and walk on two legs. He said their front paws were almost human-like. But he said they looked like German Shepherd, Husky, Wolf, and characteristics. Colors, brown or black. There was one that was almost like a gray color that he saw. The eyes, he said, were, like brown, like a typical dog's eye. The ears were more pointy than a dog. He said they were more like a Doberman. The bodies of the dogs were very thin, but somewhat muscular. They weren't like skinny, hungry. It's not like he wasn't, the ribs weren't showing, but he said their chests were kind of like massive. The upper body, they were massive. He said they actually had elbows. The front arms had like elbows because of how they were holding their arms and things. And he never said anything that Dogman or werewolf.
That kind of adds a little bit of credibility to it.
Yeah, it does. And the thing of it is, I asked him, I said, have you heard of Dogman? He goes, no. He said, werewolves. And he goes, no, these don't, he's an old timer. He was probably thinking I knew Fontaine. But he said these dogs, he thought maybe they were all wounded in their hands, and that's why they were all walking on their feet. But he said these things. He was 6 foot even, okay, and he said they were just a little bit bigger than he was. They weren't massive, but they were just a little bit bigger, half a foot or so bigger than he was. But they kind of like surround him, and he's got single barrel shotgun. So he knew I could hit one or maybe two of them, if he got further back enough, hoping that it was spread. But he was scared for his life. But he said the other ones were just looking at him, sniffing. They were probably about 3 feet away from him in all distance. They didn't get like up on him. But he said that he without him even realizing, because he's moving back, they're moving back with him, and he goes, I don't know if it was me moving out or they were moving me out of that area. And he goes, once he got into the tree line, they didn't bother him anymore.
That's strange.
They just let him there. And he told the story. How we got a hold of the guy is that he told the story to his daughter-in-law, and his daughter-in-law was kind of into like paranormal stuff and things like that. And she ran across ours on Facebook, and she said, hey, my father-in-law saw this, and would you guys want to talk to him? It's like, so it was interesting. He goes, really nice guy, really grandpa figure and everything. And he goes, I'll never go hunting again. He goes, it scared him. He goes, I've been doing this all my life, and I've never seen anything like this in my life.
I bet that would scare the hell out of you.
Yeah. Just the fact of not understanding what it is,
Yeah.
and the fact that, he never looked at it as werewolves or dogman. He looked at it as, here are these dogs that are different from normal dogs that's walking like a human. So at one point, he even thought they were like demons, because he was spiritual. And, and of course, that's the thing, with someone spiritual, it's a demon.
Yeah.
And he looked at it that way,
I get it.
Yeah. But that's kind of a unique story. We get odd stuff coming in, believe it or not. We've got 3 reports over a year period in 3 different parts of the country where people were in cemeteries visiting their loved ones, and they were seeing what they described as dog-headed people wearing cloaks.
Yeah, I heard something. I think it was Linda Moulton Howe said something about them at one point being like guardians of the cemeteries or something.
Right. See, and that goes back. If you look at the Hellhound, okay, the Hellhound, everybody thinks the Hellhound is something evil. No, the Hellhound is the hound beast that protected the souls in the cemetery from demons trying to steal souls. Okay, that's what Hellhounds did. If you go back through the history of Hellhounds, that's the original theory or the original thought of that's what they did, in any type of story. At some point, these Hellhounds, either got evil or they lost faith or whatever, but that was their job. And, to sit there and think, do these things exist? And, when you talk to, 3 different people don't know each other, 3 different parts of the country within a year's period, one person saw one saw one, and the other people saw 2.
Yeah.
And they were both wearing clothes, and they looked at each other, and he said, these were like real dog heads. These weren't like costume, and they were just walking around the cemetery. That's weird.
Well, that kind of goes along with Anubis too, doesn't it? It seems like those fit because he was like the guardian of cemeteries and death.
Anubis is the god of death.
Right.
Okay. So he's a whole different type of entity. He's the one that's going to come against. The Grim Reaper basically was based off of Anubis, because the god of death, and the Grim Reaper is one that comes and takes you when you get ready to die. But if you look at early Christianity, okay, give for example, before it is today, it was more of a pagan type religion, Christianity, Catholics and so forth. And, they had animal-headed gods, that they were praying to. And basically when things were changing over to Christianity, you can't have people praying to animal-headed gods. You had to have a human figure, Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, for example, to get people to believe. Okay. So with that being said, then you look at, St. Christopher. Now, the original St. Christopher, any of the drawings or any of the art, like in the Vatican, has an original painting of St. Christopher, but he has a dog's head.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. The original St. Christopher had a dog's head. And at some point, they took the dog head and put a human's head on him. Now, if you look at the history of it, what I found out, and through my research, because I wrote a book called The History of Dog-Headed Men, is that the St. Christopher figure was part of a dog-headed race of people that had battle with the church. Okay. Now, when you look at Mesopotamia, which is modern day Iraq, there's accounts there where they traded with a race of people that were dog-headed. All through the Middle East, there's stories about this. Okay.
Okay.
And so St. Christopher, the figure himself, was the only survivor left of the battle. So they took him prisoner and they taught him Christianity, and he became, priest and so forth to that effect, and then ended up becoming a saint. And that's where you get that from. Now, there are certain texts out there that backs that story up through certain theologies. Okay, talk about this. So, and like I said, I found pictures, of the original Saint Christopher that was from the Vatican.
That's just fascinating, man.
Yeah, because I know a lot of priests. I know a lot of, because I'm Catholic and so forth. I even have a rosary that was blessed by John Paul II. So they were able to, when they were in the Vatican, got to the museum and stuff, they were taking pictures for me. So I had a picture of the painting that's there. Now the Vatican Museum's got some very odd stuff in it, So
yeah,
it's got some odd stuff in there, but there is background background material kind of backing that story up.
Wow, that's fascinating as hell, man. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Hey, do you know if have there ever been any reportings of people being attacked by these things?
There have been quite a few attacks, where people are being attacked by them. We've had reports where not so much attack, but aggression, and they were able to get away. The Land Between the Lakes story is probably the best well-known attack to, the family that was allegedly massacred there in the early 1980s.
I'm not sure I heard that one.
Yeah, the story is his family was camping down there, and they were attacked by the Land Between the Lakes, which is a dogman. Excuse me, and it massacred the family. The little girl was allegedly found in a tree. A lot of jurisdiction was there. I mean, I've talked to quite a few former police officers who stated that they were there and that the incident actually did happen. So, but you can't verify the story.
Yeah.
That's the thing, because there's no documentation about that.
Well, it kind of leads into the question, how many bear attacks do you think are actually dogman attacks?
I think there's quite a few. We don't know that yet. That's why we're still waiting on some of this more information coming back from the U.S. Forest Service on different where bear attacks have taken place across the country. And that's why we're trying to put a map together saying, okay, you had a bear attack, in this part of, Utah. Well, did we have any dogman sightings or any reports of people being attacked in that area? To see if there's some type of match, to that. And that's kind of what David Pilates did, with his stuff. He would take, an area where they have had missing people, and he cross-reference it with UFO sightings in that area and different cryptid sightings in that area, and to see maybe if there was some connection.
Yeah.
And that's basically what we're doing. Trying to figure that out, that, because a bear attack can be, or dogman attack can very well be very much covered up as a bear attack.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Well, how many do you think that the David Pilates thing could also go with maybe some Dogman Attacks? Maybe they,
it's hard saying. The thing about David Pilates, is, he's more in tune to missing part and the history of the people who are missing, and the strange activity that took place, I guess, when people came up missing. I don't think David Pilates actually, I believe he wants to believe that there's a connection between UFOs and cryptids and things like that. But he'll never come out and say it. But he makes it in his book where he kind of suggests it.
Yeah, he tries, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he makes you make the decision.
Yeah,
because he'll never come out and say it. I believe he believes there is a connection there, but he wants, like I said, in his books, if you read his books, he kind of teases you with it, but he's letting you make that decision because he's not going to do it.
Yeah.
I think eventually he will come out when he gets enough evidence to prove it. Okay. He'll come out and say, yes, there's a connection to cryptids and UFOs, to missing people. But, he's very, very thorough. Okay. So he's going to make sure before he makes that type of announcement, he's going to make sure he's 100%, and stuff. But even though, people are going to believe him anyhow, so
I know, like, Bigfoot and Dogman sightings, they're kind of sometimes even hard for a seasoned vet like you to tell the difference between them. But if there's an up close encounter, what is the biggest difference there? Because I've heard that. Oh, go ahead.
No, I mean, I get the point what you're saying. Even at a distance, you can tell the difference. Okay, but yeah, like I said, back in the 70s and 80s, no one knew about a dogman. So if they saw a large hairy animal in the woods, they thought it was a Bigfoot because that was the big thing at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what they would recognize it as. Now today, it's quite different. People know what a Bigfoot looks like. Okay, you know what a dogman looks like. They know what a squirrel looks like. They know what a deer looks like. Okay, so they're going to know even from somewhat of a distance. By the way it moves, they're going to know that it's something different. And, other than a Bigfoot, difference between a Bigfoot and a dogman.
Yeah.
Because the dogman, the characteristics are very canine. And that, the thing about the human body or the human brain and the eyes, it focuses on things that the shapes of. Okay, so when you're looking at something, you're going to see it. It's same thing like with when people take pictures and, they say, oh, here's a Bigfoot, and here's a dogman or here's an alien or something like that. And it turns out to be is shadow and light, but it has the form and the characteristics because your mind and your eyes are seeing that. Because your mind and your eyes are trained to look for those particular type of features.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the same thing with looking at a cloud. Well, you see a cloud and it looks like a pig, or it looks like something because it hits your eyes and your mind, because those things exist. What they look like. You're focusing on it, so that's what it looks like. It may not look like that. It's just that's what your mind's telling you that it looks like. But when someone sees something that looks canine, they know it's canine. If it looks human, it looks human.
Right.
It's
I've heard stories of people walking their pets or whatnot, and they think they see this thing, but they seem to be scared. Like it gives off something that chills them to their bones. What do you think about that? People
have reported like some type of telepathy or some type of what they would call radar counting on them, from these, creatures, where it kind of sends like a fair message out to them to that effect. That's the best way I can explain it.
Okay.
When people see them, it's like they sense it before they see it.
Yeah.
Intuition, I guess, is the best way. And I think it's the energy of these things that they're feeling. It's the same thing like, being, when you're scared walking through the woods, you're alert. You're completely alert. I mean, your brain, your heart, your blood's pumping, you're scared. So you're going to be able to pick up more things hearing wise and visually wise that you probably would, because you're looking at your surroundings now. You're alert. Everything is going off, lightening up in your head and so forth. So you're able to pick up a lot more. I think when people are scared, their brain capacity picks up a little bit. So you start getting, I'm trying to think of the right word for that. What would that word be? You're able to absorb more of the energy around you, so you're able to pick it up more, and you're able to pick more things up, see more things up, hear more things that you would never do or able to on any other time.
I understand what you're saying.
So I think that's what it is.
Do you think our government or any government out there knows these things are around?
Oh yeah, I mean they have to know, but the thing of it is, you have to look at it too. They're not a national security threat. Okay, they are a threat to humanity and things, but you have to look at it this way too. If you're not taking a whole lot of human life, you leave it alone. The human species can't coexist with other species. And it's simple. Okay. We kill what we don't understand.
True.
And I think that has a lot to do with it. If people knew that they're monsters, what are they going to do? They're going to gather in groups and they're going to go out and
light those torches and grab their pitchforks.
Yeah, grab the torches and pitchforks. And you don't want that, and because innocent people get hurt. Innocent people get hurt, and it puts fear. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I used to think humanity could handle things. Okay. To give an example, UFOs, perfect example. Okay. Let's say, well, obviously not Biden, but, another president had since came on TV and, said UFOs exist. Okay. We have ships, we have, bodies. They haven't became a threat to us yet, but we're able to protect the planet. We can protect, our country if needed. So not to worry, at that point. Well, I think a large majority of the people would not be scared because they knew UFOs exist. Okay. They know ghosts exist. Okay. So, you go to bed, you wake up the next morning, you're having breakfast with your kids, you're getting ready to work, you get them on the bus, you're driving to school, you got something to talk about at work, you come home, you eat dinner, and you take your kid to soccer practice or basketball game or whatever. I mean, life goes on. Okay, because you're scared, but you already knew they exist. It was just confirmed to you. So you kind of got that relief filling over your body. And I used to think that about humanity. Okay. And then COVID-19 came. and look at the way the idiocy of the American people when it comes to COVID-19. We're sheep,
Yeah.
you know, and thank God, you know, it was something that little, but I mean, the day UFOs are proven to exist, I mean, I think, you know, mankind's just going to blow up because they're not going to be able to handle it. You can't handle COVID-19. How in the heck are they going to handle the existence of extraterrestrial?
Well, I think they've been trying to program us for.
And I think they have too, you know, but, you know, our country's a divided country. You know, we have no faith in our justice system. We have no faith in the FBI, the CIA, and our own government. Okay. So how are you going to trust a government that comes out and tells you, you know, UFOs exist, and they knew this, you know, 70 years, and they kept that from you?
Yeah.
Okay. And then they're going to sit and tell you, well, you know, if they get hostile, we can protect you. Are you going to believe that? No, because they lied to you for 70 years that they didn't exist.
Yeah, I'm going to start asking more questions like, what really happened to Kennedy? What, you know, I'm going to go down the list.
Right. That, you know, that kind of thing, you know, so you're not going to have a trust. And what people need to understand, okay, I spent 20 years in the Army. Okay. You know, the United States, if we're ever invaded by aliens, okay, the United States Army is not going to sit there and protect cities. Okay. I mean, the thing of it is, they're going to protect government interests. They have to keep the government money. Okay. So they're going to protect government and government interests. You are on your own, buddy. Okay. The military is not going to come in to downtown, you know, USA America and drop off a bunch of guns and ammunition and say, you know, hold them off, boys. It's not going to happen. You know, you and your neighbors are going to protect your neighborhood. Okay. Of course, if the fighting takes place in your town, they're going to come in your town because that, you know, that's where the danger is, you know, and they're going to stop it. But, you know, people need to sit there and, you know, face up the fact you are on your own.
Yeah, I would agree with you about that. All right, so let me finish up here. What do you think Dogman actually is? Because there's lots of theories out there. Do you think he's a flesh and blood creature? Do you think he's an alien? I mean,
it's hard to say. I mean, it's truly hard to say. I think to me, he's flesh and blood. And he's also supernatural at the same time. You know, we do get some stories and some reports dealing in the extraterrestrial part. But I think he's more flesh and blood than anything. Okay. I think it's something that's always been here, but was never noticed because he kept himself hidden.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So, the North American Dogman Project, do you guys take new members?
Yeah, we do. We take members all the time. Right now, we don't have open membership right now because we are reorganizing things right now. We got like 800 members worldwide, and we're redoing. You can still go on the site, but we're doing stuff through the site. We cut off membership for right now, like you said, because we're reorganizing groups, getting all the membership information out through the different states of who's in that state, who's in that region. And it's hard to do it when you got people joining every day because you're just going back, redoing the work that you did already. So what we basically did was just cut off membership. But if you want to join, you know, go to our Facebook page and say, look, you know, I would like to join. Or if you're still also joining, where it says report on the site, says report an encounter, just go ahead and sign into there and just in the information box saying, look, I'm sorry, I don't have a report, but I'm very interested in becoming a member. this is my name and email address. Could you please put me on your list? That's the best way to do it.
Okay.
So we're looking at probably July 1st is when membership will start opening up again.
All right. Is the website the best way to reach you, or is Facebook then?
To reach me quicker would be my regular Facebook page, Joedy Cook, or the North American Dogman Project Facebook page. Now, there's quite a few different North American Dogman Facebook pages. You have like Region 3, Region 1, things like that, but there's just the main. If you just type in North American Dogman Project, that's the main one. You can reach me through there. If that doesn't work, any NADP, North American Dogman page, you can send a message to that person and say, listen, I need to get a hold of Joedy Cook, and they'll get me to you.
Okay. And to report a sighting, they can go on the website, right?
Yeah, go on the website. And I highly suggest go on the website and put your report there.
The website's great, man. I'll tell you that. I love your website.
Yeah, I actually, so does the federal government. We actually had our website provider contact us and kind of ask them what's going on, because they said like every single government agency has been on your site.
Wow.
We get a monthly report on who's been on our site. Now, I'm not talking about, ordinary Joe sitting at home on his computer. Okay, if it's like a government agency or a large corporation or something to that effect, it shows up. It tells us who it is. We've had the CIA, we've had the NSA, Department of the Army, Department of the Marine Corps, Department of the Air Force, U.S. Forestry Service, Department of Agriculture. We've had the Canadian government on ours. We've had the Australian government, the New Zealand government. We've had the Indian government.
You're popular.
Yeah. We've had a lot of activity on our page.
Awesome.
And I'm just saying, I don't think it's the government checking in. I just think it's a government employee on a government computer.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I really appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Not a problem.
I would like to have you back on sometime again if you got time. I understand you're busy as heck, but I'd like some updates and find out what's going on, man, because I know you've got some really, really cool stories I'd like to get out there in the next time.
Yeah, anytime.
Well, that about does it for Dreamland tonight, dreamers. If you like the show, please remember to hit the subscribe button and feel free to leave us a review. Thanks again for listening, and good night.